It's now a great pleasure to introduce somebody that I knew when she was ambassador to Canada, and we were just getting reacquainted today because at that time I was involved with the Governor General, His Excellency the Governor General of Canada. If I were to tell you all the things she has done, I would count as the first thing she did was to give women a place in the Foreign Ministry of Egypt. She became the very first, she's too modest to say so, woman to achieve high ministerial rank in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I know people who knew her, and she didn't take any nonsense, they said. And I've always thought she has had a brilliant career in spite of the obstacles to a woman in a ministry rather male-dominated, as you might imagine. So we're glad to have you come in today. She is now visiting professor at Yale.
Thank you very much indeed. And it's such a pleasure to be able to meet once again with Mr. Paul Rich and Professor Amman. And frankly speaking, I did prepare, of course, you know how academicians are and diplomats are. You prepare your notes. You expect actually to be able to share it with everybody. But frankly speaking, since we have been together since almost 8:30 up till this very moment with all these articulate speakers, I would rather that we have a dialogue, that it would be questions from you, and I'm sure that actually the organization here will be able to put the paper I have prepared online for all of you to read. And it's just that I would like to begin by saying the following. To become a career diplomat, to become a professor, to become actually a person that can make a difference on people's lives, the magic touch that I learned from my parents is simple: education. I will never ever forget the day when I was at school at the American College for Girls, which is a Presbyterian missionary school in Egypt, and it celebrated 100th anniversary 2 years ago. And I am a product of this school, and I'm proud of it. And I still remember as a very young child when I saw Helen Keller walk on the stage of the chapel, and I'm a Muslim woman, and frankly speaking, I was like taken by such surprise, and I went back home and I told my parents, you know, I've seen Dr. Helen Keller and the miracle worker, Ellen Sullivan. She took her by the hand, but Helen Keller became my mentor. Just as many of my mother's generations had Huda Sha'rawi, who was the first woman in Egypt to be actually fully empowered by her belief in the cause of women. Huda Sha'rawi and Nabawiya Musa and so many other women in Egypt, as early as 1919 and 1923, could have never, ever made the transition to what we call women empowerment if they did not get actually to realize the importance of education. And by that I mean the following. As early as 1872, Rifa'a Tahtawi, a Muslim theologian in Egypt, wrote his book, Honest Guidance to Educate Girls and Boys on Equal Footing. And we all know that there were all the time connections between the suffrage movement in the United States of America, together with Huda Sha'rawi and so many of the women liberation pioneers in Egypt. I could have never made it, neither as a diplomat nor as a visiting professor at Yale University, if I did not pick up my parents' advice. Never be a closed book on one of the shelves. Share knowledge, extend to everybody who ever asks any advice. And that's what I do, actually, with my colleagues at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Egypt, the young diplomats, or with the very, very articulate young Azhar Fulbright scholars who are here in the United States. We have a grand Imam of Egypt who believes in education. And I wish if each and every one of you would be able to read the bulletin that the Grand Imam of Egypt had issued after meeting with more than 3,000 Egyptians from all walks of life after the 2011 uprising. And in fact, the reform mentions in the very first clause quality education, respect for women and children's rights, respect for three Abrahamic religions of the world, respect for dialogue, respect for interaction that can bring the world together, and full compliance with international treaties that Egypt had already convened. So altogether, and I dare say, the mass media will always say women are actually oppressed under Islam, and I beg to differ. If I was not a Muslim woman who did not understand perfectly well the religion of Islam, and here I have so many Quranic verses that read to me and to men on equal footing our social responsibilities. And women in very early Islam were going out actually not only to the battlefields, but actually they were specialists in jurisprudence. And the woman that we narrate, we take most of the statements of Prophet Muhammad, almost 2,610 genuine statements from the Prophet, is Sittina Aisha, his wife. So after all that, how can we project Islam as being oppressive? 3 days ago at Yale University, we had the pleasure of hosting practically 8 young women and men who are imams, who were chosen by the Grand Imam together with the Mid East Fulbright. And they're here studying at Yale University, Brandeis, Stanford, name it. And the talk that they had and the dialogue was about women's issues and how women can maintain their rights by knowing their rights through quality education. I will stop here because I would like very much that we begin our dialogue, please.
Sahar Khamis, a professor in the Department of Communication, University of Maryland. Thank you very much, Ambassador Shakir, for these very insightful comments. And my question is about women, especially in Egypt. We have seen how, active they were in, the revolution. They took a very active role in the political sphere, in the media sphere. And in an earlier panel today, we're talking about some of the backlashes that happened in terms of their representation, for example, in the parliament, the number of women who ran for elections, number of women who actually got seats in the parliament. What are some of the measures that could be taken in order to not only safeguard women's gains that they have acquired during the revolution and their participation in the public sphere, but also hopefully to enhance it further and to take some positive steps in the direction of maybe enabling them to have more political and social and economic participation in the future? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a doctoral dissertation, actually, that one of my students will be writing very soon, I hope. Frankly speaking, it's not the constitutions that really can maintain women's rights. We all know that constitution in Egypt, in Yemen, in Libya, in Morocco have clauses about women's equal rights. However, what happens to be the main obstruction is changing mindsets and the quality of education. We were all there, probably some of us were, some of us were not, when we heard this great presentation on how men do not trust women to be governing and how women do not trust women to be governing, which is very sad. And of course, I have a little bit of a reservation on that. However, having said that, because frankly speaking, if I am an ambassador representing 83 million Egyptians, how do we lack this understanding or confidence in each other? What happens, and this is very normal, we need to go, and I mean we, all of us, those of us who believe that we are educated, we need to reach out to rural everywhere in any society. The difference that anyone can make is really reaching out and education. But frankly, if I'm to do that, I'm not going to be wearing, this kind of elegant clothes. I have to be in community sharing and understanding the needs of the society. And currently, as of course I'm sure you know and many of us know in this room, the needs of the Egyptian society actually somehow have been marginalized. And when we're talking about National Council of Women, indeed, the National Council of Women in Egypt was very industrious in bringing in changes in, I would say, more the legal apparatus in Egypt. But it did not reach the poor men and women and the underprivileged men and women in Egypt. We failed the societal needs. And here again, when I look and I compare, for example, what we describe as transnational feminism, and another jargon actually, globalizing feminism. There's always this new jargon when you're teaching empowerment and gender issues. But what is needed mostly is human interaction. The difference between Egypt as a society, and I went to Malaysia, and I went to China, and I went to so many places to learn. In the Malaysian example, and this is mostly Muslims actually together with the Malayans, Anwar Ibrahim was able to reach what we describe in economic terms as bottom up. He was able to go to all the small villages. He was able to change mindsets to the role of women as agents of social change, real agents of social change. In Turkey, I know very well from my experience, and I lived actually in Turkey for 5 years, and I know from my experience that many of the Turkish governments started using women imams, which is very interesting. And that's the grand vision of the current Grand Imam in Egypt, that women imams can really reach out to women because they're able, considering the very traditional societies, they're able to walk into their homes. They're able to talk with them about basic health needs. They're able to talk with them about the need to send their children to schools. So here again, and we do know that a woman makes a nation. That's the truth. Empower a woman, you have empowered a nation. And this is the famous poet, actually, 1940s, Hafiz Ibrahim wrote that, and it became the slogan of many governments in Egypt who were able to reach women through actually giving them what we call in-kind assistance. Because, again, when we're talking about dropouts in the system, how can you reach and change and bring back little girls and boys to schools? Give them 2 meals, which is in-kind assistance. Give them breakfast and give them lunch. So this way, when they go back home, they don't need food. And in rural areas, this is very much needed because the underprivileged need, frankly speaking, to send their children to schools. But then they will come back hungry. And if they come back hungry, that means another meal. So what is the difference? The difference is the schools can provide meals. And this is an incentive in itself. I hope I was able to address your question. Please.
There's a lot of debate in the Arab world about the merits of women's quotas in parliament. On the one hand, it guarantees a certain amount of women's representation in government. On the other, some people say that it's sort of an artificial measure of women's advancement. Do you think that women's quotas in parliament are a good policy?
Thank you, because I was looking the other day actually about affirmative action, be it in the United States or actually when we were discussing it again at the Yale workshop. We had to understand the vision of these young religious leaders, and their age group is no more than 25. And in fact, there was one of them whose specialty and whose majoring, the dissertation is in comparative between, it's a comparative analysis between the case of Norway, which has quotas for women in its system, and Egypt, when actually there was the former regime of Mubarak, and currently many other Arab countries. And his dissertation came up with the conclusion that you have to build in trust for both women and men in their political abilities. So if you bring the quota system the way Norway did, it was really introducing politicians through this quota system and parliamentarians. Sorry. So if you ask my honest opinion, I would say that in countries where there is a gap in education between men and women, you need to bring about the concept of political participation of women by quotas, by affirmative action. However, having said that, before we get into that, you need to really bring about the understanding of how effective women's participation in parliament would be. We have a quotation by a very famous, again, theologian, Imam al-Ghazali, who was known actually throughout the 50s and the 60s and the 70s to be very much anti-women. Then he visited an Arab country, stayed in it for almost 10 years, returned back to Egypt, and he declared the very first forum he had in the Grand Azhar. You know, the Azhar institution is the 1,000 years old, the oldest in the whole world. And of course, everybody was kind of surprised, you know, what is he going to say, you know, now that he's been away for 10 years. He said, I am re-editing, rewriting all the books I have written which were anti-women. We need to visit all the Quranic verses that really bring in the equal status of women and men, and I have denied them that, and I realize if I am to rewrite again, I'm going to be putting Margaret Thatcher, Golda Meir, and actually he mentioned so many other very influential women in the world and how effective they have been to bring development to their countries. Now that's an imam who has so many publications in Egypt, and he asked that the old publications would be set aside and that all his new written books would be the one taught at Al-Azhar University. So again, it tells you that indeed women as political participants, once they are educated, and I'm underlining education, then frankly speaking, political participation can be very important because they need to be decision makers. You cannot decide on my behalf just because you are a man, you see. And that's where I learned from early childhood that decision-making should be partnering. should be a man and a woman that can take the decision, and there where parliaments are very important since they are the vehicle for democracy. And it takes two to tango.
Yes, are there, I'm thinking the domain of economic development, are there any prohibitions in Islam that would keep women from entering certain job sectors, or are there any, opportunities that you see for improving the economic opportunities for women?
Again, this has been discussed in details in many of the, I would say, the narratives of Muslim scholars since the 19th century, and probably before that, since the time of Prophet Muhammad up till today. And it says very clearly that there's equal social responsibility between men and women. As you know, in Islam, women were teaching jurisprudence, which means the Sharia. And then when you think about women as economists, women as doctors, women as warriors, and this is throughout the Islamic history. And here, if you permit me, I will read a verse from the Quran that tells you actually social responsibilities for both. In the name of God, the most merciful, for Muslim men and women, for believing men and women, for honest men and women, for men and women who are patient and constant, for men and women who give in charity, for men and women who fast and deny themselves, for men and women who guard their chastity, for men and women who engage much in God's praise. For them, God has prepared forgiveness and great reward. When you look at the verse, and there are so many others, it's both as responsible in many of their social responsibilities. Having said that, women actually are asked to be active in their social beings. Women have the right to work actually and be out there in public sphere and work. Actually, there are so many women as winners, only breadwinners, in the household, in many families, in many Muslim societies. And when you think about the wife of Prophet Muhammad, Khadija, she was a businesswoman. In Saudi Arabia, you will find that there are so many business women who are there actually very active. In Egypt, if you look at the, actually, I wouldn't call it a micro, but the macro and the medium-sized enterprises, there's approximately 20% owned by women in Egypt, not only in Egypt, but in many Muslim societies. Women, actually, like Tanshus Şiler was a prime minister in Turkey. And then when you look around the world, you will find that, for example, in Ceylon, Bandaranaike was a prime minister. And in Bangladesh, again, Prime Minister Hosna, and this is, again, a Muslim society. So frankly, and I dare say, CNN will never bring to us the good news about what women are doing, in the Muslim world, but will bring to us, unfortunately, the sensation of somebody, who's being flogged somewhere in Nigeria or whatever. But this is where the mass media and the role of the mass media is so important in all societies, not only here, but all over the world, frankly. And I'm sorry, you had a question.
So of health, women's
Yes.
health.
Yes.
And I'm thinking especially about family planning. When it was my husband, an agricultural economist, who was approached by a student man who said, I have 4 children in Egypt and I'm going home, and please tell me, what can I do? I need no more children.
Contraceptives in Islam are a given. In other words, you will find that there are many talk shows about contraceptives, and you will find that many of the planning clinics in Egypt are distributing contraceptives. And of course, there is a medical need for it, and it comes as one of the basic health issues. So here again, we live under a certain myth that contraceptives are prohibited. In fact, there are some cases where women used to sit with the Prophet's wife and discuss actually means of contraceptives from the cactus. You know, cut a cactus, inside it, this is actually what they use in pharmaceuticals. So when you think about that, it's just that we really are in need of understanding so many of the basic issues that somehow never come to the surface when Islam is being discussed or talked about. We talk about women being oppressed, and we forget that Islam never really oppressed women. It was decontextualizing the text up to now and misinterpreting many of the Quranic texts. And there where really I give a lot of credit to what those young imams from Egypt are doing, what the Grand Imam of Egypt is doing, and sisters in Islam in Malaysia are really doing tremendous, tremendous work actually in the rural side and the cities, just to bring about the proper understanding of what Islam is all about. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.